Hello, everybody. It's Donna Cravata, and we are here with another wisdom panel. And it is the Wisdom Revolution. And we are live with an incredible panel of women who are absolute experts in everything menopause. And I'm thrilled to bring them here to you together today. So I'm going to do a quick introduction and then we're going to get into the conversation. First, we have Dr. Jessica Drummond. She's the founder of the Integrative Women's Health Institute. She's a leading functional nutrition and women's health expert, and she's trained thousands of women's health and wellness professionals worldwide, and she is a podcast host and an author. Stephanie Shaw is a holistic nutrition strategist. She's a speaker, host of the Hello Hot Flash podcast, where real talk about menopause happens, and she mixes science and natural solutions, so there's something for everyone. Kate Wells holds an MS and an MBA and a fellowship in herbal medicine. She's a menopause advocate, a biochem nerd, speaker, author, and the co-founder of Parlor Games, where they are saving the world one vagina at a time. Michelle Folan is a Faster Way health and nutrition coach. She's the host of the popular Asking for a Friend podcast, where she interviews respected experts on health, wellness, career, relationships, and more. And it's all geared towards women over 50. And Rachel Braun-Churl is a vagipreneur, a champion and pioneer of the business of women's sexual and reproductive health. She's a femtech expert, a board member, a trusted advisor, a speaker, and an author of Orgasmic Leadership. Wow. So let's just jump right in and talk about, let's start with breaking menopause myths, because let's get that out of the way and then we can get into what really matters. So what are the things that you hear people talking about, or questions that people bring to you in your practices, in your conversations, that just need to be dispelled once and for all?
Until very recently, and I'm not a practitioner, I don't deliver healthcare. I don't even play a doctor on TV. But the most frequent comment that we hear from consumers and patients is, I feel so alone. The nice part is, and they also had no idea how many of the things they were experiencing were actually related to menopause. So they have an explanation, if you will. The conversation obviously has accelerated over the last couple of years. And I, like to joke that it's a good thing the New York Times discovered menopause 2 years ago. So now it's a real thing. But it really is lack of knowledge. And because of that, feeling lonely and not connecting the symptoms to what you're experiencing. And with things like increased anxiety, which comes with menopause sometimes, and lack of awareness of the symptoms, it really could have a very deleterious effect on how a woman feels about herself, how productive she feels she could be, her sleep, her energy, and dozens of other symptoms.
That's really good. I think of one of the myths that a lot of women think is that, you have that perimenopausal period, then you have the 1 day of menopause, and then postmenopause means it's all over. And that's a huge, huge myth, because our hormones continue to change. We continue to potentially have hot flashes, sleepless nights, anxiety, and understanding that this is not just a in and out phase, it becomes the rest of your life. So the things that you need to do to take care of your body continues at another level. You can't eat the way you used to, but you don't have to be strict in the way that you eat. You need to move perhaps a little differently. And while we can think of that, we also don't need to get caught up in the aspect of this is the end, because I think of it as a new beginning. It's just a different way of doing things, and there's still a ton of joy. And a lot of people think the myth is that life is completely over after menopause.
I think the biggest myth that I see is that menopause is only about our reproductive and vaginal health, when actually it's a huge metabolic and immune shift that impacts our long-term brain health, bone health, cardiovascular health. And so we have to address it almost as, Stephanie, you were just saying, like an opportunity into a new phase that's very similar in some ways to puberty, although in reverse, kind of unfortunately. And so I think when we think about menopause as just being about hormones or hormone replacement, we're really missing the full system physiologic shift that happens, but also the shift in opportunity to kind of revisit our vision, our goals. What do we want the next 30 years to look like, where we have much more adult autonomy than when we're in that puberty transition?
So one of the biggest myths I think out there is the storyline that estrogen causes cancer. That message has terrified practitioners and it has terrified patients. The Women's Health Initiative study that began in the late 1990s was stopped in 2002. When there was this early interpretation of the results and this message came out that estrogen causes cancer. Well, time has passed and the results have been analyzed and reanalyzed, and a significant number of papers have been produced that actually refute that message. Now, it's not to say if for some reason somebody does develop cancer, and particularly if it's an estrogen receptor positive cancer, estrogen can feed that. But this message that estrogen causes cancer is being shown to be erroneous. It is in fact so many other things that can contribute to, cell dysfunction where, cancer gains ground. If it's there's so many, there's probably, a good 30 contributory factors that can help cancer cells to thrive. And so women, I think, have been harmed very significantly by this erroneous message. That's not to say that all hormone supplementation is created equal. It's not. There's big differences. That myth, I think, has had the impact that the lack of estrogen and the lack of progesterone have contributed to increased inflammation in bodies, increased levels of Alzheimer's or occurrence of Alzheimer's. I mean, there's a whole host. As Dr. Drummond is talking about how hormones play throughout our whole body, and the lack of those hormones, have big long-term effects for that long period of time after menopause. And I think that's one of the big myths that we have to dispel on a regular and consistent basis.
Well, and I think related to that women with endometriosis are unsafe to take estrogen.
Right.
That's also not true. It certainly has to be looked at more carefully on a more case-by-case basis. But women even with certain kinds of cancers, with endometriosis, are not automatically disqualified from having potential benefit and benefit over risk of estrogen hormone therapies.
And I will add too, and I'm not a doctor, but I certainly read enough and encourage my clients to get answers from their healthcare provider. But the myth being that being 2-3 years out of menopause is too late to start estrogen therapy. And that is not the case. And when you look at bone health, brain health, there's many reasons why estrogen could still be appropriate therapy for women even in their 60s. But you have to find a healthcare provider that is up on the latest and greatest. And that's not to say, like you were saying, there are people where estrogen therapy is not going to be appropriate. And I understand that. But I think that the patient population where it is appropriate continues to grow. And we just have to make sure we're asking the right questions.
We had been talking before the webinar started about really it's important to understand, and I would say this is also a misconception, how many different parts of your life are involved in menopause. It could affect your brain, your body, your mental health, your sexual enjoyment, your financial future. And when we say menopause, there isn't no one size fits all. Where would you go? It's not the medical community's fault. Where would you go if you have symptoms that are adipose body fat, brain fog, anxiety, bone pain, concerns about your teeth, and vaginal dryness? There isn't one specialty that handles all that. And so what's really, really important to know, and don't ignore your healthcare practitioner in this conversation at all, is how many different things you might need to think about from a care perspective because of the range of symptoms that you have. And, Michelle, as you were speaking and talking about, you can take some combination of hormones. I would love it if the customers or the companies that I'm working with even knew to ask that question. I'm delighted when they are trying to decide between one hormone combination and another, not because hormones are the answer, but because it reflects they have something that they can start with to have a conversation with their practitioner.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's the medical industry has changed or, it's my age, but every doctor appointment that I have gone to in the last 5 years, they only cover one body part. They don't want to talk about anything else.
Well, I think this is why I'm so passionate about and so committed to training professionals, because the reality is, yes, our health system, about 15 years ago or so was a large portion of it was bought up by private equity. And so this is a tangent that I don't want to get too far down, but the problem is that how healthcare is delivered is essentially all about financial and efficiency, results. That's what the goals are. The practitioners working within these systems don't have much time, bandwidth, autonomy to look at people as whole humans. And so we're educating clinicians all over the world who essentially are beginning to step outside of this kind of practice, or they're remaining in it in a very specific way, or in areas of healthcare that are really innovative, because this is exactly the problem that's continuing to become even more specialized over time, because it's just the economic model of medicine changed dramatically in the last 15 years or so.
And Dr. Drummond, I know you didn't want to get down that path, but once people start down there, I'm like, I'm on the bandwagon with you, because personally, I went to 18 different doctors, 2 world-renowned medical facilities. I spent over $20,000 out of pocket. And it was because when my, the flutters in my eye were taking place, that wasn't the same doctor that I needed to talk to about the sciatic pain or about the aura or about the hot flashes. So it is so linear, I guess, in the way the thinking is taking place. And I'm saying this to say hats off to the doctors that are now stepping up and understanding that we need someone that can understand exactly what is going on through our entire body, so that they can help us get to where we need to go. Yeah. So hats off to you for doing that.
So now as just, women that don't have the answers and are going through this, can you all provide some solutions or, strategies for how we can deal with our own bodies? And what are the questions that we ask? What do we need to bring to the attention? How do we advocate for ourselves, I guess, is the real question.
Well, I think, first of all, when you do go to your care provider, and I think you've got to make a list.
Mm-hmm.
And make your list of everything that you have going on. And unfortunately, a lot of appointments are like 15 minutes, but you've got to kind of put your foot in the door, hold that door open, because if you don't go in prepared, ready to discuss all of your issues, I think that's really the best place to start.
I
Well,
agree.
yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dr. Jessica.
I was just going to say that I think one of the simplest ways is for an individual to recognize that this is a huge metabolic shift. So you have some power to actually set certain foundations in your health from a nutrition and a movement perspective. That's not going to be the whole solution. But if you think of menopause as a metabolic shift rather than a hormone shift, you're going to ask your doctor for basic foundational panels around your metabolic health, your blood sugar, your cholesterol, your cardiovascular health, your thyroid, your immune system, basic markers. So having that standard basic blood work, vitamin D, starts to give us more information about how your whole health is, kind of how resilient or not resilient you're weathering the menopause transition. And then level 2 is like actually looking at hormonal related symptoms, the ones that can be more directly addressed by, primary care providers and traditional gynecologists are hot flashes, night sweats. Those are the ones that the kind of standards of care are written around. And so that's a really useful place to start. The other big place is sleep. So I think if we start with asking questions about metabolic health, the basics of immune health, how are your actual kind of like known menopause symptoms of hot flashes, night sweats, and how is your sleep being impacted, you might be able to make more progress on those initial couple of conversations with a primary care provider.
And that
really
combination of what Michelle said and Dr. Jessica said is super important, because when you go in and you have the questions and you're asking the questions and understanding that provider, if they won't sit down and answer the questions for you, or if they tell you no to the testing, because I've had that done as well, you don't need that, you're fine, you look great. That's your opportunity to own the situation. We talked about this before we actually went live. There may be a case where you need to fire that doctor. I think of it this way. A lot of people, maybe if you buy a bra, if it doesn't fit right, you take it back to the store, or if they won't take care of you, you just stop using that company. But we often feel like we aren't empowered enough, or maybe, I don't know if it's the woman thing where we think we have to be nice, or I don't know why, but a lot of times we won't step up and say, hey, you're not the doctor for me. I need to move on. That's why I ended up at 18, because I kept saying that. But I had to be really, really sick in order for me to start moving to the next position. So owning that if you're not getting the answers that you need, you're coming with your list, you're asking the right questions, you're asking for the test, and maybe they give them to you, but they don't understand what the results really mean. That's your opportunity to find another physician that will care for you.
I would add a couple of things. And first of all, you want to go to a certified menopause specialist, someone who's actually trained in menopause. And Dr. Jessica, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the average amount of training you get in medical school for menopause, could fit in, on a notepad, on a sticky. So that's really one important thing, to know who you're going to. And the other piece is, I don't like to paint the doctor as the bad guy or girl in the equation. If you're working in a system that is based on insurance payment, and the system you are under only allows you to give 15-minute appointments, the doctor doesn't necessarily want to be done. He or she doesn't want to overlook those symptoms, but the system is not set up for them to be able to have the complete kind of conversation you would need to really talk about a comprehensive menopause treatment. So it's not that caregivers aren't caring or healthcare practitioners aren't interested. It's they are, in certain respects, victims of a system. And when we hear people go into concierge medicine, which is fee for service, and insurance generally is not involved at all, that's wonderful, but that eliminates lots of people who can't afford to do that. So there are some fundamental problems with the system and accessing care. So there's a time and money piece, as in most businesses. Time and money often determines what your access is.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I started to do, and it's really helped a lot, is I use the portal, and I keep in touch with my doctors throughout the year and it's not just once a year that they see me, and they all respond, and it's really helped a lot. And I'll like, if I think it's something that involves more than one body part, I'll copy them because they're all in the same practice. So, you know, let them talk amongst themselves.
And
And
I
it
think
seems
what
to be
One
working.
one of the resources that we have available for our customers, we focus primarily on vaginal health, and then hormones kind of wave out from that, the other hormones. Is we have a handout that says how to talk to your doctor um, about vaginal health. And it's a resource that helps them when the doctor says, "Oh, it's just part of getting older." It's a resource that says, "Hang on a minute, I don't think so. What if that way of thinking is wrong? How do we get you some resources so you can help me?" Um, because many practitioners, um, this is the way it is. They have the confidence and they have that assurance, or perhaps that's covering up ignorance. We don't know. Um, but many patients don't feel empowered to say, "Hang on a minute, but wait, there should be more. This isn't normal." And so we help give them the words in order to push the practitioner to help them at a deeper level.
And Rachel, to your point, I 100% agree. I never want my tone to come off like I'm bashing physicians. They only have 15. I totally get that. But just like for Donna's example, like you're copying them. So they do take the physicians who really want to get to the root cause of what's going on for you will take the time. I was fortunate. It's probably because I was sick for 2 years and I kept knocking on everyone's door. Two of my physicians went to lunch together to talk about me. Like that, I know that can't always happen and doesn't happen, but I would encourage people once again to look for someone who will, outside of that 15 minutes, if they can take some time to try to figure out what's going on with you. That was more my perspective, not just, I don't doctor bash. I love my doctors.
Well, and I think we should start looking outside of physicians as well, because there are very highly trained. I mean, the vast majority of the people we train in our institute are allied health professionals, physical and occupational therapists, naturopathic physicians, health coaches, even fitness professionals can be very well versed in the specifics of fitness training and exercise optimization for women in the perimenopause transition if they're trained in perimenopause and menopause, acupuncturists, chiropractors. So one of the things that we talk about physicians a lot, because a few of the key tools, such as medical hormone therapy, are by prescription, and those are really valuable tools, but many of the tools available to us to optimize physiologic health in general through the perimenopause to menopause transition don't require prescription. What they require is changes in light exposure, changes in sleep hygiene, changes in how we exercise, from, for example, really intense cardio to modulating cardio intensity and increasing strength training in a really specific way to build muscle and bone for the long term. And this depends on what our goals are in our 70s and 80s. And so, cardiovascular health, VO2 max optimization, generally speaking, physicians are not trained in any of this. Nutritionists are, dietitians, physical therapists, occupational therapists, health coaches. And so I really encourage people to perhaps have a kind of lifestyle medicine professional who is trained in perimenopause to menopause transition as almost the core of your team. And then those 15-minute appointments with a primary care, prescription access provider, such as nurse practitioners, PAs, physicians, can be much more efficiently utilized.
That's really good
One
advice.
one of the ways that I sometimes will, encourage women to think about it is, we buy insurance on our house. And that's in case there's a massive storm and the tree falls through the roof. We're gonna get the roof covered. That's a component of health insurance, of house insurance. But we don't pay to maintain the infrastructure of our house. we pay we pay out of pocket to maintain the building so that the roof is strong, or that our wiring systems are still working. Um, and so a little bit of understanding how we can help ourselves navigate through some of these changes that come with menopause, perimenopause, and menopause, and so on, is thinking, all right, what can I do? Where do I reallocate where I spend my money? Is it on those drinks that we get from the drive-through that contain a lot of calories, or are we saving some of that and reallocating it somewhere else? And Dr. Drummond, to speak to your point, like, what do we want in our 70s? What do we want in our 80s? What are we investing in now in terms of our health, in order to make sure that we're still bouncing around, running up mountains or whatever it is we want to do, dancing, I don't know, having fun with our loved one, in our 80s? How do we invest now, knowing that, yes, we can go to, knowledgeable people for advice, but it is us who's going to have to do the work, um, and, uh, and think about it from that point of view.
Yeah,
That
Kate, I love that. And when I'm working with clients, and most of my clients are 55 and older, and one of the first things I do is I ask them, what are your long-term goals? Because we're not looking at the quick fix. We're looking at laying a solid foundation of nutrition and fitness that will take them to their 70s, 80s, 90s. And, when I say, how would you like to be able to get up off the floor unassisted when you're 85 years old? How would you like to be able to go on that vacation with your whole family and be able to keep up when you're 82? And those are the types of conversations we have. And women are hungry for that. They want those things. And they're willing. I think we're starting to see this renaissance of women wanting to take their health into their own hands, and I love that. I love that. I think they're feeling more empowered and more interested in nutrition and fitness, so that they can enjoy these coming years. Keep in mind too, Gen X turns 60 this year. So, we've got a very large audience here that is, I think, ready for this information.
Yeah, and I think as we were growing up, we didn't expect to have the life expectancy that we can expect now. I mean, we didn't think we could live past 70 or 80, and that's all changing.
And our moms were busy, right? But our mothers weren't lifting weights and worried about their protein intake and getting enough fiber. And we know all that now, right? We're learning all of this now when we start looking at our own longevity. And so we've got a leg up. It's just a matter of taking the bull by the horns and taking action. I see Stephanie nodding her head. So yeah.
So I think longevity is another good topic to talk about, like, because we're at this pivotal point in our lives, in how we are aging, the things that are happening in our lives. The things around us are changing. Many of our, children are going away, parents are leaving, there's just different aspects that are happening. And we can set a different type of lifestyle at this point. So maybe we could talk a little about that, and how we can prioritize things that can help us live into a much older age than we thought we could, and do that in a very healthy and health conscious way.
Right. I think stress management, as we're touching on before, before our conversation started, was, stress will pull the rug out from underneath so many efforts. to live an optimal life. We are not meant to live, running from one fire to another. We're meant to be chased by a lion and then have a period of calm and relaxation where we're like, "Ooh, that was close. I'm just going to eat some berries now." Um, but when we find ourselves in lifestyles where it's like one email after another, after another, after another, am I talking about myself here? Where we're going from one task to another, where we've got all of a sudden, there's a chaotic moment with a family member who has dementia that we're trying to manage. We're going from one thing to another to another. Um, that is triggering our fight or flight stress response system all the time. And that I mentioned, it pulls the rug out from under us. It just hijacks our biochemistry and how everything works within the body. That involves the endocrine system and all the hormones. It involves the neurochemical messengers in our brain. And so, along with sleep, as Dr. Drummond mentioned, you know, m- finding the ways to look at potentially stressful situations and go, oh, look at that, as opposed to the sky is falling. So working within ourselves, maturing our response to things, perhaps finding some kind of spiritual center to anchor us. Um, that seems to be one of the foundational pieces that we can do to enjoy many years after menopause.
Well, and I think what Michelle said about vision and goals is so important because that helps women to kind of not just be running away from symptoms, but to be directing their strength building, their bone building, their nervous system regulating or stress management, sleep, all of these like day-to-day activities and lifestyle for a purpose rather than trying to be like, I want to, I'm running away from certain kinds of pain, whether that's actual pain, sleep issues, hot flashes, vaginal dryness. That is not found in the literature to be motivating for very long. It's much more motivating in the long term to be clear about why you're changing your lifestyle. As Michelle said, like our mothers did not get up in the morning and think about their protein and fiber, how much they had to get in before 9 a.m., how much sunlight they had to have, how many pounds they had to lift that week. It's actually kind of a lot to do to maintain the physiology of your 30s, and even early 40s, well into your 80s. That requires a level of lifestyle maintenance that's actually really pretty intense. And how we approach that in a really kind of fun, joyous way versus more stuff we have to do in our 40s, which we're already super busy. We're already dealing with aging parents and teenage children and all of the other things we have to do at work. I think how we think about longevity requires us to be really centered in why we want to be so healthy, for what actual purpose into our 70s and 80s.
I was thinking about what Rachel had said. You mentioned mindset, and then Kate and Dr. Jessica both mentioned the word joy. And I think a lot of times that's the piece that's missing. Like, you'll be happy, but do you really feel joy? And there's this difference, and can't really explain it, but I'm reading this book, and it talks about taking your brain back to a memory that you had where you just felt this rush, this energy that you can't even explain, and then keeping focused on that when all of the other stuff happens, or maybe proactively thinking about that the first thing in the morning. And I'm trying to get there. I feel joyful, but I probably feel happy more than I feel joy. When you start to feel joy, the eating enough protein, making sure you have enough fiber, knowing that your parents are aging, though, that can help you navigate through this second part of your life. Because, as Donna said, we're living a lot longer. So we need to understand and find where we can get more centered, find that joy so that we can navigate through the rest of all of this stuff that we have to have to go through.
And I would also add community in there is kind of part of that joy. I know somebody touched on community a little bit earlier. We know in the blue zones where we talk about, longevity, community is very important. And women, I think, are at an advantage there. We tend to be a little bit better about building community and solid friendships later in life than men. And so I really feel like that is something that gets missed sometimes, about just those interconnections that we have with other women, and that can also spark joy.
Yeah.
And all the happiness research that comes out says, the key to longevity is meaningful connections. They don't say if it needs to be 2 or 200, but really being in relationships that have meaning and trust, and empathy and reliability, make an enormous deal, in terms of have a big impact on your ability to live a longer, healthier life. Because as you said, Donna, I don't think the goal is just longer. I think it's better. So we're not counting the years, we're counting the quality. So I think that's really important. And the other thing is, regardless of what you do to fill your time, one of the other characteristics that seems to be a theme for happy people is that they have a mission. And again, it doesn't matter, or a purpose. It doesn't matter necessarily what it is, but to be focused on something that you're trying to do or improve or accomplish, and it doesn't have to be running a marathon or, getting a new patent for a scientific, innovation. It could be, my objective is I want to read, one book every 2 weeks. Fill in the blank for yourself. We don't need to give ourselves yet another bar that is too hard to get over. But when you feel purpose. It's not something someone can teach you. When you feel fulfilled. And going back to the comment I think you made, Stephanie, when I have adult children, and when they were younger, you talk about that feeling. When we were facing a challenge, I would say, think of the time, or a time that you felt really strong and brave, or where you really felt like you could accomplish something. And I always use the same examples for myself. And I felt like it was a great way to think about, I remember that feeling of when I felt good. How do I bring that into this situation? And I don't think that's age specific.
No, I don't think so either. That's good. That's great. I have another question I'd like to pose to the panel here. So can we talk about the business of women's health, but not from the perspective of the slimy side of the business? I want to talk about the empowering and the encouraging and the growing movement of women like you that are all leading in a way that empowers us to be proud of our age, be proud of our accomplishments, be open to what's next, and how you're leading into that space or from that space. I'd love to have some chat about that.
It's a funny intro about the slimy side. I'm interested. That could be a whole nother webinar, what exactly you're referring to. A couple thoughts, as that's what I spend all my days doing. We hear the consistent refrains. It's, difficult to be a woman, to raise money. It's difficult to be in women's health. It's difficult to be a woman in women's health. I would add, the first business I raised money for, I was that I was building. I was in rooms of 30-year-old, mid-30-year-old men. I was middle-aged, not quite as middle-aged as I am now. I guess I'm out of middle age, which is even more distressing. And you're talking about doing that, and saying the word vagina or vulva or clitoris, that doesn't endear you to people. So there are some systemic problems. One is the ability to fundraise, which is enormous, and it doesn't just affect women, and it doesn't just affect women's health companies, but 2% of venture capital goes to women. That's like a refrain that we all have tattooed on our heads. The second piece is that when you get funding, and a new study just came out, I've been fighting this since 2008, there are some barriers for access to social media channels. Mm-hmm. So when I was launching a company in 2010, we went to 100 media outlets, cable, website, radio, TV, didn't matter. And 95 said no. Last week, including Facebook, which was Facebook at the time, last week, the second of now many studies that have come out reported that in the UK, there were 6 or 7 businesses who got blocked, meaning these channels, these companies will not take money to advertise these products because they're too sexual in nature or too explicit. Mind you, any time of the day or night, you can find people, pedophiles and every other thing that we can all agree is horrible. I think, on these channels. So you have the access to capital and the access to the system that will enable you to build it. And those are combined. What you're looking for in venture capital or in financial worlds are, what is the comp? Like, what do companies like yours sell for? And we don't have enough good comps because of, a number of reasons. Many businesses fail because they're not good ideas or they don't have the right founder. But again, some of these systemic problems are pretty big. I had written an article, I didn't realize how prescient it was going to be, called "What if Hims Had Been Born a Hers?" Now we refer to Hims and Hers. Amazing funding, amazing growth. Same with Roe, which started out as a men's health company. There are realities, and I could go on. This is too long an answer, and I apologize, but this is what I think about and talk about all day long. All this means is that you have to be even tighter and better and clearer about what your business is, what problem it's solving, what are people currently using to solve that problem. Is there any evidence that people are willing to go and find your solution and pay for it? So all of those things are still required. You just have to be even more disciplined and even more thorough and even more buttoned up. It is possible. Companies are raising money. Women in women's health are raising money. Businesses focused on vaginas are raising money. I just spoke to a woman yesterday who's the CEO of a company that's created a new speculum for when you go to the gynecologist for your internal exam or for a number of other things. They've raised $65 million. There are companies that are doing it who have figured out a way to put all those pieces together.
Okay. Now, Kate, I would love to hear your take on this because you're doing this in a very grassroots way, and you've been really successful.
Yes, we have. Parlor Games has grown just from the ground up. Kirsty and I put in $5,600 to order our first batch of inventory, which was 3 large boxes, which felt terrifying. And we've just, we didn't pay ourselves the first year. We just reinvested everything, back into advertising. And we have not had to raise funds. We have grown the business just by not paying ourselves so much, but reinvesting in the business and growing and making some what we hope are sensible decisions. One of the things we thought early on was we would hear from our customers that they couldn't get a practitioner who would listen. And I know a lot of practitioners. A lot of my work has been in the integrative medicine field, so I know lots of practitioners. And we thought, well, maybe we build out a platform that develops care, provides care. And we have somebody in every state, and we have this health platform so that women can get access to care. We ran some numbers on that and kind of looked at what that would be involved, and we decided, what, that is not our core business. Our core business is providing good products that work, good hormone products that work, and the education piece. And we mentioned community earlier. We have a massive Facebook following in our private Facebook group. But we say no to a lot of things. Our team members are great at coming up with ideas, and we track it back to what are our core things that we know we're good at, that we can replicate, that are being successful. And so it takes the discipline to not rush off down rabbit holes, thinking that there's another little pot of gold down there. It's just that discipline is your point, Rachel, is very important. I will say that one of the things that we have some other business principles. We hire a lot of women in our company. We hire people who have a can-do attitude, those who want to help. But we instigated early on a 30-hour work week. That is full time. And so, many people are attracted to that. Many of our employees do have family. And a 30-hour work week makes it possible to do both. And we're really committed to having that structure that makes work-life balance possible. And we have an excellent retention record, I think, in part because of that. But we pay our team members well. We pay them as if it was a 40-hour work week for their 30-hour work week. And we, when we generate net profit, we have for want of a better term, profit sharing, so that we share that. I mean, everybody works very diligently and is very committed to our mission. And so I think certainly for now, while we're keeping the parameters around some of these policies and our decision making, it's helping us to make these incremental growth steps that we made. We probably have 45,000 customers on auto ship, just by being steady and incremental and sticking to principles.
That's amazing. And you've only been in business for 4 years.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think we also go ahead, Donna.
At my first foray into the Facebook group, I was blown away. I mean, this stuff that people are sharing in there is really very, very personal, and they're supported, and it's a very large group. From somebody who has managed groups, it was really impressive.
that was Kirsty's brainstorm, not mine. It's very good at that stuff.
And I think we also have a problem in women's health in that we still are very behind in research. So the reality is we don't actually know what works. Any disease that is more prevalent in women, which is many of the kind of longer term chronic illnesses, even most recently long COVID, is dramatically underfunded. Endometriosis is dramatically underfunded, even though it impacts 10% of women. I think it's $2 per person per year or something like that, which is dramatically less than any other chronic illness we're dealing with, and dramatically less even than things like erectile dysfunction. So part of the problem is we don't actually know what is most effective in terms of things to solve these problems, because we don't have the research capacity, and that is getting dramatically worse right now, really abruptly. And so we're going to have to kind of keep an eye on that.
This makes me so
Along
sad.
those,
I'm sorry. I was just going to say.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, I was just going to say it makes me sad because where is the buying power? Like, if you look at any data, women, that we control this so much, and how are we ever going to get to the point where we come together? And if you're buying a product or service, is it a woman-owned business? Maybe you can't always do that, but kind of putting that in the forefront of your mind, because we have to start pulling our resources together so that we can get past some hurdles. I'll leave it at that. I'm sorry, Katie.
Yes.
Oh, not at all. It's so another area of this is like the field of environmental medicine, kind of as a subset of integrative medicine. There is a fair amount of research on the impact of forever chemicals and pollutants and toxins that are in a food supply and in our water supply, in the air, that really disrupt metabolic function within the body. But there is not, and it's still a subset of use of that material, that research information. There is not widespread acknowledgement of that. I think that could be too dangerous for so many other industries in business ecosystem, like chemicals, for example, to really create the space for a bigger, broader, more honest conversation about the role of chemicals and how they're disrupting many functions within the body. But again, that's a whole other conversation there. But it's something that we need to address as a collective community to get behind. Well, what are we? How are we? Again, I'm going to use the word hijacking. How are we hijacking our metabolic function by having these toxicants in the body that we can't deal with? So,
just to jump back to the economic power for a second, there's an enormous transfer of wealth that's happening. Women will control more assets, to the tune of billions and billions of dollars than they ever have before. 80 to 85% of the healthcare decisions, the consumer purchase decisions are made by the woman in the house. This is not insignificant. So there's so many different ways to change things. But one is using your, conscious capitalism, not necessarily, and I say this with caution, not necessarily buying a business from a woman-owned founder because she's a woman, but because it's a great product and she's a woman. We don't ever want to be in the situation where and I'm careful in this current environment to say that could be one of your purchase criteria. But ultimately, companies that succeed often succeed because they're offering something that's meaningful that people are willing to pay for, and not just once, but over and over again.
That's sad in my mind, that wasn't understood, but I'm happy that you actually said that, because that's.
No, I knew you weren't suggesting inferior products, but we're not asking for a handout. When I go to speak to people, don't invest in this because when I speak to venture capitalists, because it's the right thing to do. It happens to be the right thing to do. Women weren't included in clinical studies till 1993. We have a ways to go to catch up, but invest because this is a serious business solving a serious problem where you can make serious money. And when you lead with the economic story, that, right now is a better chance of working. In the early stages of women going out and raising money for women's health companies, they were encouraged to say, share your personal story, which were, hard and sad and compelling and motivating. But that's just part of it. Ultimately, it has to be an economic story.
I agree.
Yeah, and there's the whole mindset too that I know as a entrepreneur business owner now, where the space where I am, it's really wanting women to change their mindset, to know that they matter, to know that they need to and can prioritize themselves without being selfish, caring for yourself. And I think, Rachel, you may have, I don't know who brought this up earlier, but that we found during COVID that if mom's unhealthy, the whole family is unhealthy. And just it's that empowerment, letting women know, hey, push aside diet culture that has pushed you to do some unhealthy things. Start focusing on you, what's going to make you healthy and happy. And ultimately, what you do for yourself will start to reflect in your family. And it can be a really beautiful thing when the rest of the family kind of comes along when mom starts really prioritizing her health.
Well, we're rounding up towards the end. So what I would like to do is just go around the room and ask everybody to provide a wisdom bomb, something that people can take with them, actionable, and with that, just share the thing that you really want people to know about menopause, and it doesn't necessarily just need to be about menopause, but any of this broad subject. These broad subjects that we're talking about.
I'll start.
Okay.
Having turned 61 this year, I don't look at the end game. I feel like I'm just starting. And I want to encourage other women that age is just a number. It's really attitude and what you choose to do with it. And I really look forward to these next 20 plus years. And I want other women to come right along with me.
Love it.
I'll go next and just say that you listen to your body. So if you think you're having twitching in your eyes, if you think your feet are tingling or your hands are tingling, they probably actually are. Don't let anyone talk you out of it. Don't let anyone automatically prescribe some medicine for anxiety when there may be other things that you need to do. Ask for a plan before you get to the pill is what I always say. So that's my wisdom bomb.
And I'll jump in. There are so many that I was thinking about as you guys were talking, but I'll do one that has always worked for me, which is remember to experience the joy and laugh. I love comedians. I love watching classic comedies. And there is something about laughing that makes, and smiling, that makes your body feel different and better. I'm not offering that as medical advice, but laughter has gotten me through a lot of challenging, both personal and professional situations.
That is kind of medical advice.
I love it.
I think that medical advice would cover all of the body parts.
Yes.
I would say expect more. You know, from your interactions with practitioners where, you know, perhaps you turn up and the doctor says, you know, it's just part of getting old. Your response is nonsense.
Mhm.
What's your second offering on this topic? Because that first offering of this is just part of getting old is not going to work for me. What's your second offering? Um, and and just keep asking. No, that's not good enough. I want more. I deserve more.
I think you should trademark expect more. It seems to be the evolution of just do it.
Mhm. I love that.
Well, and I would say to build on that, build a team. Don't expect one person on your healthcare team to answer everything. And know that we actually do physiologically have the tools available to us right now to really mitigate the kind of physiologic effects of aging, dramatically slow them. We are all going to age and we are all on a continuum. I think the other thing to be aware of is maybe your own internalized ableism. There's not sick and healthy. There's always a continuum there. And when we don't recognize our own internalized ableism, we tend to be really critical of ourselves. But know that literally we have a lot of tools to keep you very healthy, very energized, very focused on your mission, whatever you want to do from age 50, 45, you know, and if you start feeling these symptoms in your late 30s, 40s, this is very normal and you should address them earlier. And then both expect more from your team and know that if you take certain actions, you can really expand your health span. We really do have access, almost all of them, direct to consumer. And so the more you learn and understand and have a good couple of, you know, knowledgeable people around you, you can access pretty much anything if you're willing to make that investment in your knowledge.
Do you have any specific thing you'd like to share?
Specific tool, I would say, well, honestly, hormones really are a game changer. And I think we're learning a lot about bone and muscle as being strongly foundational to the rest of our physiologic health. So get your DEXA scan early in your 40s if you can. And then as you build muscle and bone, that is what's going to protect your heart and brain long term. So it's a combination of hormones, nutrition, and particular exercise and rest, the balance of those.
It's good to know that it's there.
It is. And we have a lot more tools. I mean, I could get super nerdy about red light and, you know, vagus nerve toning and all kinds of stuff. But the reality is those foundational things are the biggest needle movers.
Okay. Any last words of wisdom?
Women rock.
That's very true. As all you do as well. So I'll put this link in the chat on all of the platforms, but Rachel is going to be speaking at an event in New York on
New Jersey, and
New
lots of other
Jersey?
people.
Okay, all right. And it's Saturday. What's the date on
March
Saturday?
29th.
March 29th, and I'll put the link in all of the comments as well. So you can go if you want to do that, and you can find the replays and everything about all of these women over on the real50over50.com. And there's a whole page on this wisdom panel. I will put the replay there. These conversations keep going. So if you're listening on the replay, you have questions, comments, ideas, thoughts, tag us. Let's keep it going. We're all online way too much. And thank you all for coming and bringing all of your expertise and your experiences, your wisdom, your knowledge. It's so appreciated. And everybody, please share this with who needs to hear it, because if one person hears one thing that makes a difference in their life, the ripple effect is exponential, and that's what really matters. So thank you all, and we will be back every Wednesday with another interview.
Bye-bye.